Hello, everyone. It's Stephen and Walter here for another episode of So Chatty. It's episode 94 on, what's the date? March the 10th, 2023. And we're having a little bit of snow here. Again, we don't want any more snow.
And it's right at freezing.
So,
0.
So, with what?
Which is 32 Fahrenheit.
Yeah, well, it's optimum time for snow.
Yeah.
With it. But anyways, yeah, hopefully it won't stick around because we'd like to get rid of it. We're sick of it. We'll mail it to you. So what are we talking about today? Well, lots of things, but let's take a look at what we have been working on. I will start with this, but Walter has something to show you this week. Yes, he does. I know, knock you over with a feather, right? So here we go. I just finished this table runner. This is an In the Hoop project. If your memory is very good, probably not. I have made one of these before, but in a different color scheme that I intended to give to my brother and my sister-in-law when we go out there to visit next month. I liked it so much, the first one, I didn't want to give it up. So I thought, no, I'll make another one. So this one I've made for them, used a little different color scheme, as I said. Kind of bright and springy-like and whatnot. And it is an in the hoop project as well. Takes a little time to do this. Now, somebody's going to say, well, what, you make this whole table runner in a hoop? No, you do different panels. You'll notice that there are squares. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are 12 blocks in this. And you do each block individually, and then you sew them together. And it's very easy to sew them together. And then you put a backing on it and just do a little stitch in the ditch to hold all the layers together, because the quilting on this is already built into each one of the square designs with it. Actually, I added an extra layer of battleizer, which is a very thin but dense batting. Best used in placemats and in table runners because it keeps everything nice and flat if you sit things on it. They didn't call for another layer of it because in each one of the squares there's a little bit of battleizer in those, but the seams are so big underneath it that I think it makes the quilt, or not the quilt, the table runner will go a little lumpy. So if I put an extra layer of battleizer, which I do, it evens it out, and then sew the backing onto it. So I'm making now some placemats using the same design, but less squares, of course, or less blocks in each placemat to go along with it. And I might even make some napkins to go with it too. So it'll be a whole set of things. We'll see how that all works out. So Walter has something to show you, though.
Well, it's a shirt I started working on a while ago, but I finally got around to finishing it. Well, almost. I still have 5 buttons to put on. So
it's the kitty shirt.
Yeah.
The kitty.
I still have 5 buttons to put on, but we're almost there.
It's going to look fantastic on me. And I will be sure to be wearing that when we go to the East Coast for the Canadian Quilt Show in Halifax in June. So
it's my pocket.
Yep. It's an invisible pocket too.
Some threads hanging off here, but
yeah. I love that shirt.
Yeah.
That's good.
So anyway, so
good.
I'm almost done. I will finish it soon.
I hope it fits.
Yeah, right. It's pig size, so it should fit.
What Walter meant was it is classic handsome size for me. He wears pig, but whatever. Yeah, you're so complimentary, not. Okay, so other things this week. Well, we're still having fun with our coffee maker, our new one. And I made today, for the first time, a caramel macchiato. On a rare occasion, and I haven't done this in a long time, like pre-pandemic kind of a thing, I would on an occasion go to Starbucks and order a caramel macchiato. And the Starbucks I went to was in the shopping center in our city, and it was inside of Indigo Bookstore, which is Chapters. I don't know in the States what you have is equivalent, so whether you have Chapters or not, I don't.
Barnes and Noble.
Yeah, probably, yeah, like a Barnes and Noble. Anyways, that I used to sit there and go through a few things, and well, that was way back actually when Walter was still, you were still working.
Yeah.
at that. And so I'd go over and do a little shopping and have a caramel macchiato and look at some quilting magazines. Actually, at that point, I wasn't even quilting. I was looking at art journaling magazines and stuff like that. Anyways, Walter came home the other day, as he does, with a whole slew of these syrups that baristas use when you get a like a flavored specialty coffee and that. But we hadn't tried anything yet. So there is a setting on the new coffee maker for a coffee latte or a macchiato for a
Macchiato.
macchiato. Oh, yes, what's that one song? Mr. Roboto Macchiato, whatever. What is Italian? That's Japanese. Anyways, I digress. So I tried it out today, and yeah, it tasted exactly like you get at Starbucks. I really liked it. It was wonderful. So, yep, we're loving our machine. And you got syrups that do like what? I saw one for Irish cream and
Yeah, just little ones that you throw in with your coffee,
Right.
because that one doesn't really have flavored coffees in that
no, I know.
machine. It just uses regular beans. So I thought, well, I'll give this a try. You never know.
Anyways, we're having fun with our expensive coffee maker. Yeah, getting our money's worth out of that one. So, okay, on to other things. Embroidery hoops. Now, last week, this is sort of a follow-up, a short follow-up to what we talked about last week about getting your files onto your embroidery machine. And somebody told me, I don't know if it was during a craft and chat or that, we had mentioned that the machine will tell you which hoop to use. And it's very advisable to use the hoop they tell you to use, because if you don't, if you use like say a too small a hoop for a larger project, your machine will just keep going, and your needle will be driven down into the plastic frame of the hoop. Ask me how I know that. Okay, and that will wreak havoc on your machine and on your hoop. But somebody told me that their machine won't let you do any embroidery. It'll read what hoop goes into it.
Well, that is true on some machines.
On
Like I
some.
know, like the new Janome
M17.
M17 has it so that it will recognize which hoop you're using. And I think your 15,000 used to do that as well. I'm not sure. But anyway, but on our, we have strictly embroidery machines from Janome that are, what's that,
We have 550E.
550Es. And they will tell you what hoop to use, but if you use the wrong hoop, it'll still try and embroider.
Yeah.
It won't stop embroidering it if you've got the wrong hoop in there.
So anyways, that we got thinking about, maybe we should talk just briefly about the hoops that come with machines and don't come with machines. Well, and when we're talking about machines, we mean Janome. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like we've got a 550E, which is their latest just embroidery machine. It only does embroidery. So it comes with a number of hoops. Now, some people may have gotten the 500E, which is one model below. The new 550E comes with one bigger hoop, which is the R36B hoop. And now that hoop would work on a 500E, but you wouldn't be able to get the programs to use the
that size.
Like, I mean, physically you could put the hoop on there, but you can't get a pattern that fits into the R36B hoop that utilizes the whole space. Because the other thing that's different about the 550E, other than the hoops being different, is that the 500E, the embroidery arm that gives you the size of your embroidery pattern, is smaller. So it won't work with that hoop.
In other words, the hoop's too big for the arm that actually manipulates the hoop. Is what he's saying.
Yeah.
Okay, on that. So you get several.
I mean, you can't just go out and buy an R36B hoop and expect it to be able to use the pattern that fits into it.
Okay, now I'm going to stop you there because that is extremely confusing. Yes, you can get a pattern that would fit in that hoop for it, the size. What you can't do is use that larger hoop physically with your machine, because the arm that moves the hoop, like this part here of the hoop goes into the arm, can't accommodate that size.
Yeah, well, so what else is the electronics in there probably would not recognize the R36B.
No,
Yeah.
it wouldn't, because it can't do that.
No.
So yeah, but as far as size of the file you get, you can get a file, but you're not going to be able to do it and utilize a hoop that size with that machine. Okay, that's probably confused you all. Anyways, the machines come with certain hoops. Now, the cheaper the machine, the less selection in hoop sizes you have. Some people make the mistake of looking at the price of a machine and saying, and seeing the hoop, and they say, oh yeah, well, it comes with a hoop that's 4x4, 4 inches by 4 inches. And they're going, well, I'm just going to be putting monograms on a towel or on a pocket of a shirt. I don't need anything bigger than that, because they're looking at it because the price is a lot less. Well, guess what? Size matters, because you are limiting yourself. If you can only do a hoop that's 4x4 or 5x5, something like that, that limits the projects you can do. For example, what I just showed you, the table runner, you wouldn't be able to do in one of those sizes of machines. So the first thing you want to do is, don't skimp out on the cost of the machine. Buy the machine that comes with the most and the largest hoops that you can afford, because you won't regret it. I can tell you, because you can do make whole tote bags.
Yeah.
But you need a large hoop.
Well, not only that, sometimes like a 4x4 hoop doesn't mean that you'll necessarily be able to do a 4x4 project in it, because there is usually a certain amount of space that goes around the edges of the inside of the hoop
that is not
embroiderable, that you can't do embroidery on.
Yeah. So anyways, we'll show you what came with our 550E. This is the smallest hoop that comes with the 550E. I'm not sure what its actual physical size is. It's well, I can tell you, I got a ruler right here. Okay, this is a 7x7.
Yeah.
So that means that, but it wouldn't be able, as Walter's just said, it wouldn't handle a pattern that was 7x7. It probably only holds as much about 6.5 by 6.5 inches. Okay, or anything smaller than that. So that's the smallest hoop. The next hoop up, there are two actually. One is rectangular. Oops, that's for that one. Okay, this rectangular hoop. And this one,
I think it's 8
by 8.5. It would be about 8.5 by
7.
about 6. About 6.5. 8.5 by 6.5, roughly. Yeah. Okay. Oftentimes these measurements are done in millimeters as well.
Yeah.
So we're talking in metric, or not metric.
So it's like a 200 millimeter by a 140 or something.
Something like that. Yeah. They don't actually mark it on these hoops.
Yeah.
It would be nice if they did, but they don't.
I know the widest part is 200 millimeter. I know that.
Okay. So then the companion piece to that hoop is a square hoop.
And I believe that one's 200 millimeter by 200 millimeter.
Oops. So in linear, this one measures. Okay, I'm having difficulty here hanging on to everything. Okay, might be easier if I just use this.
Use one piece of it.
Yeah, that would help. Yeah. Okay. I'm a little challenged here. All right, and I got my ruler upside down. I'll read it that way. Okay, it's about 8.5 by 8.5.
Right.
Yeah, so that's the square. Then the next hoop up. Now this hoop does not come with the machine. This hoop is called the RE28B. We had to buy it separately.
Now this one is the biggest hoop for the 500E.
Yeah, but not the biggest hoop for the 550E.
This is an optional hoop for the 550E.
Yeah. Now you're going to say, well, why do you want one this size when the largest hoop that actually does come with the machine is this bugger right here? This is the 36B.
Yeah, I think so.
I think it's 36. Yeah, 36B. And it measures. Hold that hoop
Yeah.
there. This one is
It's
like
11
about
something.
11. Let's see. Yeah, it's about 9.5 by about 13. I think it's 13 and a half.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
It's about 13 and a
So
half.
it's a huge sucker. Now this hoop looks different than the other ones with the way it's clamps, because it has these little catches down here and at the top that open. The other ones is just a screw, and it also will take magnets. It comes with magnets.
It's to stabilize the hoop.
Because the bigger your hoop, the more chance that it can pop out if you have during a run, if you have like a huge bird's nest or something like that. So it just clamps it down a little better. Also, this is the hoop that you would use if you were actually going to attempt to quilt a quilt on your machine. And you've heard me talk about the pros and cons of doing that kind of thing, and I'm not going to get into it right now. But yeah, that's the largest hoop. So that's a good size. You're going to get, a big project in that. This one, though, the 28B, is in between.
Yeah.
You see the difference in
It's
size?
about 11 by 8.5.
Let's just see here. It is. It's about 9.5 by, I think probably, well, it's 9.5 by about 12.5. 12.5. So it's a little small in the other one, but this one actually, believe it or not, I don't know why it doesn't come with the machine, because this one is a very handy hoop. I've used this hoop more often than I've used the absolute big one.
It seems like there's a vast majority of patterns will fit into that one.
Yeah. And then there are optional ones.
Now you could use the R36B for a pattern that goes in the R28.
Yeah.
The only thing is that the R28 hoop is a little bit more stable, and it also uses less fabric
and stabilizer stuff like that, if that's a concern.
Yeah.
Now then there's these ones. These are special. These are expensive. This is the magnetic hoop. Now, if you are a fan of designs in machine embroidery, that's in the States, they push this a lot. Don't waste your money on it, quite frankly. They talk about these, see, there's a piece of plastic in here between the two parts, because these magnets are so strong that if you got your fingers between them, it would hurt you, it would damage you. You'll have a lot of trouble getting them apart. I want to show you something. Together. Apart. Now, yes, there was a little bit of force I had to use on that to get them apart.
Now, I tried using it. I bought one. That's the one I bought. I paid $300 Canadian for that hoop. I had to wait quite a while.
Took forever to get it.
I'm not impressed with the construction of it. And it, you don't have that right.
I don't have it right.
And I tried using it for just plain old embroidery, and I found the hoop would slip.
Yep, I don't know how to do it. I'm challenged. It is not worth the money. Okay. Now, if you're just going to do something, now they tote this as being for something like if you're doing a quilt, it'll hold it so much more secure. You don't use any clamps or anything. You also have a whole line of accessories to go along with this. Really, I don't think you got it on there right either. I don't know. Anyways, my opinion is, our opinion is, we've used them. We're not amateurs, so we use them correctly. They aren't what they're touted to be, especially at over $300 Canadian for one of them. So I would say save your money on those.
Yeah, I wouldn't bother.
Quite frankly, I wouldn't buy anything from Dime. I have not had good luck with a lot of their stuff. It's a lot of hype. I know I'm going to get hate mail about this because there's going to be some of you out there to say you absolutely love Dime.
And I know that there's some people that had to do workarounds with that
Yeah.
hoop, like even they'll tape it and stuff like that to help it stay together.
That kind of defeats the purpose, with it. It's an interesting concept, but it doesn't deliver what they say it's supposed
Yeah,
to
like
do.
I tried an embroidery project in it, and the project slipped partway through, so it ended up becoming misaligned when
And it's not because we didn't know how to use it.
yeah.
Okay, I'll let you know about that. This was not user error. So
So
now,
I've heard of some people, I read somewhere that some people will put curls of tape on the inside or double-sided tape on the inside to make the hoop stick
and
together.
yes, actually, Dime sells products like that as well, in addition to this, and they come out with different ones. So obviously, this was a great concept, but the delivery of the concept does not work. And if a company has to come out with add-ons to make it work better, then there's some problem in the engineering.
Not only that, when I purchased that from a Canadian supplier, the Dime hoop, and part of the condition of sale is that it was a non-returnable item.
So, you have to question when a company has a policy that their product is non-returnable. It makes you question. But I know there will be people out there who absolutely like anything they've ever gotten from Dime and worship them. And if it's working for you, okay, if it's working for you, that's fine. We're just telling you what our experience is with it. And
I'd stick with the regular Janome hoops.
yeah, if you're running a Janome machine. And yes, and also just before you say anything, they make those hoops for various machines, and
Yeah.
Janome is one of the machines they make it for. Okay, so we didn't get one that's meant for a different machine, and we're trying to make it work on Janome.
No. There's that one specifically for a Janome machine, but they do make other hoops for various brands.
Yeah, as well. So, anyways, enough said about that. But we thought we'd just do a little follow up from when we were talking about the embroidery machines last week, because of the whole question of hoop sizes came up. And so we show you what we've got with ours. But bottom line here of this is, get a machine that, even though you may think when you're buying the machine you will never use that size of hoop, spend the money, because guess what? You're limiting yourself with what you can do, because it's the hoops that dictate what kind of projects you can do and what you can't do. If you don't have a big enough hoop, you're going to be frustrated.
Like the guy that he taught my classes and stuff got an embroidery machine, and he just said to the lady that at the store, well, I don't really need one that does anything really big, because I'm just going to do little projects on clothing items and stuff like that. So he got one that takes up to a R38B hoop, which is the second largest one we have. And now he says, oh, I'm so glad I got that machine, because I'm surprised at how many projects I do that require the biggest hoop.
Yeah. So, yeah. Okay. So, moving on. I wanted to show you another picture here. If I find my cursor. Okay. Those are my quilts. That's not all of my quilts. I have quilts in other locations in this house. These are all the ones that I have made. I have given some away, but not that many. That have been piling up. I make a quilt. I never look at it again. I mean, this would be an exploratory run here down memory lane, because there's quilts I'm looking at right now in this pile and going, oh, did I make that? When did I make that? Now, I do keep a journal and list them when each quilt is done, what it was called, and when I finished it. But there they sit, gathering dust. So, you've heard me say that I need to gift some of my quilts or donate to charity. Now, last year, I had decided, tail end of the year, that maybe I would start donating quilts to Project Linus. And I'm sure many people are familiar with Project Linus. Project Linus gives quilts to kids in need. They could be kids in the hospital having cancer treatments, or other kinds of life-threatening illnesses. They could be kids on the street or in a shelter. They could be kids who have been suddenly moved from one home to another home because of parental problems, like, divorce, anything, things that are traumatic in their lives. And the quilts are designed to bring them some comfort and that kind of thing. And they have categories as to, what size of quilt for what age group. And one of the age groups that I think gets neglected are teenagers. Because I think a lot of people think, well, by the time someone's in their teens, they don't, they're more like an adult, so they don't need to be coddled. Well, that's not true. They do. They're still kids. So I contacted the local branch of Project Linus in my area and asked about that and said, do you need like quilts that would be appropriate for teenagers? And she says, oh, yes, we do, because everybody makes baby quilts or toddler quilts, but they forget about the older kids, which is what I suspected. Have I given a quilt yet or donated any quilts to that project yet? No, I have not. I have found patterns that I want to do that I think will be appropriate for that age group of kids. But I haven't got around to them for one reason or another reason. Because, I'm like a dog. Oh, squirrel. I want to work on that project now. And some of these quilts that are here would be appropriate for that kind of thing. And I keep saying to Walter, well, I got to dig all the quilts out. We need to go through them and decide which ones I'm going to donate, which ones I really want to keep, and which ones I'm going to gift to people. Well, the other problem with gifting quilts is, how do you decide who's going to get a quilt? Now, at Christmas time, I gifted some quilts. I gave one to Walter's sister and one to her husband. They were Christmassy quilts, but they watch a lot of TV and, sit in their recliners or wherever. And I thought, quilt's nice to curl up with, especially in the winter months when you're sitting around watching TV or a movie or something like that. I gave one to Walter's niece, and one to her dog as well. Her dog went through some trauma. He was attacked by 3 pit bulls, and he was pretty messed up. And no fault of his own. They were dogs that were not on leashes, and his niece was walking her dog, and these dogs attacked it. So Freddie that's the name of her dog, Freddie got his own quilt as well. And I'd already given one to Walter's nephew and wife back some time ago, so I didn't give them another one yet. Now they do have 2 girls, but which I may eventually give quilts to, our great nieces as well. I've given a quilt to my niece and to my nephew. Didn't give one to my sister because she don't want one. So that's fine. It doesn't go with her decor, apparently. Something like that. I would probably give one to my brother and his family, but they're out west. And yeah, we're going to be visiting them, as I already said, in April. But how do I get a quilt to them that way? I mean, yeah, I'd have to put it in a separate suitcase and check it in, and that costs you money, and you never know if your luggage is going to get there anymore in this day and age. So, and also I don't know if they're interested either, for that matter. So, I don't know what their style is. So anyways, I have all these quilts, and yeah, I need to do something with them, because how many quilts does one person need, or 2 people need? So I started to do a little research on this. Apparently, there is a problem. There are many people out there that suffer from this. It's borderline hoarder in some cases, in extreme cases. I'm not a hoarder, but why won't I give up things? So I thought we'd look at some of these things, because I have a feeling we're not the only people I'm not the only person that's in this situation. So, first of all, what's the problem? Why don't I want to give up my quilts? I do and I don't. Why? Why is that? Well, I made them, and I'm done with them, and I don't go back to them. But here's something that I found. Somebody wrote on this particular site, I have a hard time giving away my quilts. This bothers me. I don't want to give them away. I want to keep them. My friends who quilt talk about all the quilts they've made and given away or put up for auction for good causes. I've only given away 2 of my quilts. An I Spy I made for my sister's grandson, and an I Spy I made for Grins that I gave to one of my ex-employees for his baby. I still have my first quilt. I actually made it for my sister, but have kept it so far. I never told her I was making a quilt for her. Maybe I should have. I decided to make a cat quilt that would be a great quilt for my, what's a BIL?
Brother-in-law,
Brother. Oh, okay, maybe.
maybe.
But I'm not sure. I'll give it to him. So out of 6 quilts I've made so far, I still have 4 of them. Does anyone else have this problem? Yes, I do. And not alone. But here are some of the answers to this. This one person wrote, I had to learn that when I give a quilt, it was a gift and I no longer had control of it. I was asked to make quilts for 3 kids with questionable behavior backgrounds, rough and tumble. I didn't know them personally, but I loved the person who requested them. I made them just like I'd make any charity quilt, but with extra hugs and prayers, figuring they'd be tugged, pulled, and ripped. That was a few years ago. This last spring, these kids came to visit me, and I learned they are very possessive of their quilts. Don't want to share and still use them. Go figure. So say a prayer and send them on their way. Okay, what I'm gathering from this answer was, you're afraid of what's going to happen to your quilt. I know I am. You spend all this time working on a quilt, and it is a work of art, and you don't want to come over to somebody's house and see the quilt on the floor with a dog on top of it. And I've heard that horror story many times where I gave a quilt to a friend, I spent hours on it, and it's the dog's bed. And yeah, and they're insulted by that.
Well, and then we've heard of situations where somebody has toiled over making a special quilt for a son or a daughter, and then later on you happen to talk to the son or daughter, and they go, yeah, that was my mother's thing. I didn't really care for it.
I didn't want, it's not my thing. Well, yeah, but like that person says, once you have gifted a quilt, once you've gifted anything, it's no longer yours. You gave it away. Whatever those people are going to do with what you gave them is totally up to them. So that means you got to figure out whether someone is quilt worthy or not. So maybe that's one of the problems I have. I want to still control the quilt. I gave one to a friend when he moved into a new apartment. And this friend is not the best housekeeper in the world. And he owns 2 cats that are a little bit on the wild side. And I just figured when I gave him the quilt, I kind of figured next time I see that quilt, it probably will be disgusting. Actually, what I was really surprised at is it isn't. He hung it on his wall, which I found completely out of character for him. I figured that it would be thrown on his couch or something, and he'd be sitting on it, laying on it, eating food on it, splashing crap all over it. The cats would be have clawed it. Didn't. So there you go. But the point is, even if that had happened to it, I gave it. I can't do anything about it. Okay, it's not mine. So you got to give up your control. Another person answered to this question said, all my loved ones have one or more of my quilts and I have no problem giving them at all. But as for casual friends and acquaintances, that's another story. I have given only a few to friends, and most of those were for grandbabies. Sometimes I look at my quilts and think maybe I should start finding homes, but then I think of all the time and money spent and I rethink that. A person really has to be worthy of one of them. Laugh out loud. I know that sounds snobby, but I don't care. I have occasionally made small things for charity, but sorry, I'm not giving one of my premium quilts for people who most likely won't really appreciate it. I think that we who take such delight in our hobby sometimes forget that there are a lot of folks out there who just don't share our enthusiasm for anything handcrafted and don't think twice about anything like a homemade quilt. And to those I say, better I give it to someone who really cares. So if one of my friends came over and oohed and awed over one of my quilts, I might give it to them if I thought they were being genuine about it. And that's where I said about being quilt worthy. When I used to do crafting, when I used to make cards, I would not give a card to somebody that I knew would look at the card and throw it in the garbage right afterwards. They get a dollar store card because they don't understand. And it's not because they hate it. And it's not because they're doing this because they're callous. They just don't understand if they don't make things like this on their own, They don't understand the value in it. They don't understand the time. You know, I'm sure everybody has heard somebody going into a store that sells quilts and they see a price tag of $1,200, $1,500, $2,000 on a quilt, and they go, "Oh my God, who'd pay that for that? I can go to Walmart and get one for $100." Go to Walmart and get it $100 then, because you are not worthy of a quilt. They don't take into consideration the time, the effort, and how much it costs to make a quilt. The ones you buy in Walmart are not quilts. They're a blanket. They're a duvet.
They're also
cover.
usually made from really inexpensive fabric.
And they're made in a sweatshop somewhere in China or something like that. These quilts that we make are quality fabric. I mean, an average quilt, an average queen size quilt is a minimum of probably in materials alone, not counting your time, $300 plus for that. So, you know, you want to make sure person's worthy of it, that they appreciate what goes into what you have given them. I have said to some people, say, "Oh, I really like that. I'd like one of those. Can you make me one? I'll pay you for it." And I go, "You can't afford me," because I know this person has no concept. And if and I've said to some before, "How much do you think I would sell that quilt for?" And they look at you and I go, "Well, before you embarrass yourself, I'll tell you, that quilt's not going out of here for under $800. And you see their eyes go, "Oh." And then you explain to them what it costs to make one, and the time and the effort. If there's somebody that's a really good friend, and I had one, he wanted to commission me to make him a quilt a few years ago. He wanted it for his living room. Now, he has a very old-fashioned style. He loves antiques, especially Victorian antiques. And I just happened to have a kit that I hadn't done at all, that I'd had for several years, that were perfect. As soon as he said that, I knew which quilt it was going to be that would suit his aesthetic. And I said to him, "No, I'll make you one. You're not paying for it. I'm giving it to you." Because I knew that for him, he'd appreciate it. And he did. In fact, I gave him a second one.
Yeah.
As well. He didn't ask me for a second one, but there was another one that I saw, and I thought, this is perfect for that friend because of his aesthetic. And I knew it was just going to sit on my shelf once I got it done. So I gave it to him, and he was very happy to receive it. So that is something that I have no qualms about. But other people, like this woman, is saying, you know, they got to be quilt worthy. Now, this last one on here I thought was interesting. This is not about, oops, let me get it up. This is not about quilts. Perhaps you can speak with a professional or a spiritual counselor to discover what it is quilts represent that you are hesitant to give up. Not an uncommon feeling, but worth examining from your own well-being. Don't worry, just a little introspection will shed some light, and it may turn out you're 100% justified in holding on to quilts, but don't you want to know why for sure? Okay, this is the psychology, and I think this is kind of where I might be more at. I'm possessive of things that I've created. I don't want to, as I've already said, just give them up to anybody, for one thing, but there is a hold on me because it's something that I made, that I put time, I put effort into, I'm very proud of, and yeah, and that is something that is possibly a psychological problem. And earlier I said, might be one step away from being a hoarder.
Well, I guess from a different perspective, I just make shirts and stuff, but I've only ever made shirts for myself and for you, right?
Yeah.
And I wouldn't want to make a shirt for somebody else.
Why?
Because there's a lot of time and effort into making the shirt. And first of all, I'd want to make sure that it would fit properly. And the other way is that it takes a lot of time and effort for me to make the shirt, and I don't think it would be well appreciated.
And would it also have to do with when we make things like this, we want them to be perfect, but we don't want to be criticized?
Yeah.
That we have a fear of someone finding a flaw in our workmanship.
Yeah.
And pointing that out to us. Now, if they're a good friend in that, they should know enough to keep their mouth shut and never say it to your face. Okay? But there are those who might say something out of not even realizing what they're saying. Or there could be those that would say something that, they're that kind of person who are competitive. And, and I tend to be competitive. And I know that about myself, and you are too, for that. And so when somebody says, well, oh, yeah, oh, I see that there's a little, maybe you could have done this here or something like that. We'll take that to heart and go, you little bugger, like, so yeah, I think we're afraid of putting ourselves, this is an extension of who we are. And we take it as a personal attack if somebody was to do that. So we don't want to put ourselves in a situation where we could come under a personal attack. And I think that's the psychology of it. We want to put our best foot forward, and we don't want anybody to say anything less than that about us. So yeah, that's a psychology thing. So maybe that's why you don't give shirts to other people, and you've had some people approach you.
Yeah.
And I've always said to them too, tell them they can't afford you. Also, sometimes people approach you for a shirt because they think it's cheaper.
Yeah. And it's not cheaper.
Far from
like
it.
There's actually even people that I know that have taken up sewing clothing go, oh geez, I took up sewing clothing because I thought it would be cheaper than buying stuff off the rack. And I said, well, no, I kind of like doing it because I can make stuff that I can't buy or have a hard time finding off the rack. They say, well, it costs much more to sew your own stuff than it is to buy some.
There was a day and an age when it was possibly a little less expensive back in, the 60s, maybe the 70s. Also, we didn't have the variety
now, mind you,
buy in a store.
Now, mind you, it depends on where you shop.
Well, yeah.
If you shop at Nordstrom, maybe.
Oh, well, yeah, okay.
Maybe it is cheaper. But if you shop at Walmart, then it's cheaper.
Yeah. But you get what you pay for.
Yeah.
Too, with it too. So yeah, some people just don't understand. If they don't sew, they don't understand. I mean, that's the thing.
No, right? That the amount of, it's not just for sewing a shirt. It's not just the material. The material is more expensive than probably a shirt that you can buy. And then it's all the hours of work that you have to put into it.
Yeah.
And you have to figure out how much your time is worth.
Now, another point about giving away your quilts either to charity or to friends or something like that is, if you don't, then you see you have a big pile of quilts, which I showed you that picture a moment ago. So if you're going to be storing these suckers, you just can't leave them in a corner. So what's the best way to store quilts? Well, according to American Patchwork and Quilting, APQS, they tell you what to do. And I am not doing it the right way, okay? They say, and this is what I found on the internet from their site, they say, where do quilts like to live? In the hands of someone who appreciates them. And when they aren't being cuddled, loved, swaddled, or snuggled under, quilts do best at the same temperature and humidity as people do. That's why it's a good idea to store quilts in a space where you feel comfortable yourself. So they say, avoid locations that see extreme temperatures and dampness, such as attics, garages, and basements. This can lead to mildew and odors in quilts. Well, that's really an important consideration. Now, where I have my quilts stored right now, that area is dry. It tends to be a little cooler because it is the basement as well. So in the summer, it's a little cooler, but our house is centrally air conditioned in the summer.
Yeah, and not only that, our basement's not fully below ground, so it tends to have a more moderate temperature.
And we're in our basement right now, where we're doing this. My sewing room is down here. Our rec room is down here. The Lucy room is down here. The laundry room is down here. So yeah, so the temperature is fairly consistent in here any time of the year. So we don't have that problem. So we don't have a problem with mildew or odors. But have you ever gone into a thrift store or whatever, and if you've been looking at blankets or things there, or even quilts and that, there is a smell, like if someone's a smoker, that gets into everything. We're not smokers, and we don't allow anybody to smoke in our house either. So that's not a problem for us. But then there's things like cooking odors. Certain types of food uh, have an odor that lingers because of spices, like Indian food or Mexican food or something like that. Well, depending on where your quilts are located in your house, it can take on that odor. Not only that, but let's face it, people smell. We all have our scent that we can't smell ourselves because we are so used to it. And you know what I mean. You walk into somebody's home and it's not necessarily, I'm not saying it's an unpleasant thing, but everybody has that kind of odor. Well, that is going to get into whatever has a cloth base to it in your house as well. So, you might be tempted then to protect your quilts by putting them in something that doesn't allow odors or moisture to get in, like plastic. Well, guess what they say here? First of all, they say find a spot that is clean, dry, moderate temperature, away from light, and well ventilated. Oh yeah, the light thing. Sunlight for sure will destroy a quilt. Will destroy any fabric. I mean, look at your furniture. If your furniture is in a very sunny room, say your couch backed on, there's a window behind it, and you don't necessarily have the window protected with a dark window dressing of some point, take a look at the back of your couch. It's going to be faded. We all know that. Sunlight does that. But did you know that natural or artificial light can do the same thing? Certain artificial light, if it's too harsh or whatever, and if that's what's exposed to your quilt, it can fade it. And different fabrics react to light in different ways. So how do you protect your quilt? Well, people are saying, well, I got to wrap it up, right? So it says here, skip the plastic bag or box storage ideas. These can also trap moisture and pests. Plus, more than one quilt has inadvertently been carried out to the curb's trash bin since it was hidden in a dark plastic bag. Yeah, don't put them in plastic. It's fabric. It's cotton. Cotton has to breathe. There are some fabrics that don't need to breathe, like polyester. That kind of thing, which is essentially plastic.
Yeah,
plastic.
Or like they say, you put it in a garbage bag and somebody will accidentally mistake it for garbage.
And you want to know something too? That could happen after you're long gone and someone's cleaning out your residence.
Yeah.
Your quilts, if they're in green plastic bags or black garbage bags, people will just open it up quick. Oh yeah, that's an old blanket. Get rid of it. And there's been a lot of horror stories about quilts that have been in a family for many, many years, many generations. And then some generation has come in, or somebody who wasn't even related to the family, but were, cleaning out the house, and they've thrown it away. Watch Curiosity Inc. if you want to see what I mean by that.
Wow. Actually, it happened to my grandparents, and my grandparents had to move houses when they were in their later years, and they threw a bunch of their clothing into green garbage bags for moving. And my uncle came in and saw the garbage bags and thought they were garbage and threw out all their clothes.
So there you go. It can happen. It says wrap quilts in clean cotton sheets or pillowcases or use acid-free boxes. Okay, now my way of thinking, this is extreme. Now, if you have show quilts, you make show quilts and you've won major awards for those quilts and the whole bit, then I would say, yeah, you probably want to preserve that quilt for the next generations and that. So you probably want to go to these lengths to do it, especially if it's a quilt like has tons of hand done applique on it or uses, different types of fabrics beyond quilting cotton, because these are pieces of art. Okay. For my quilts, I think that would be pretty much overkill for all of that. Yeah, just a delivery just came. My ring went off. It's from Amazon. Of course it's from Amazon. Then they say fold the quilts so the backside faces out and use as few folds as possible. Protect the folds from becoming permanent by crumpling up some acid-free paper and tucking in the folds of the cushion. Well, I have read that you should every so often, like once a year, take all your quilts, unfold them, air them out a little bit, and then refold them for storing because of that. However, I think that's more important to quilts that were made a generation ago or more, when fabrics weren't what they are today. Because fabric can, well, they'll get memory. They'll have memory creases in them, and it might be hard to get them out. Again, this is not something that I've done and I need to do as well, because some might have been, stuffed in that space for quite a while, and so they probably are getting a little bit creased with it. As far as folding in acid-free paper, I don't know. I don't think I need to worry about that with my quilts. And then they say refold the quilts every few months. Well, again, I think this applies to if you've
Well, I
got,
think it's refolding it in different spots.
yeah, in different spots. Yeah. I think this would apply even more so to ones, like I said, show quilts, show quilts that, have won major prizes, at major competitions, that kind of thing. But nevertheless, these are all good things to know. I think protecting them from light and moisture and bugs are probably the three most important things about storing your quilts. Or you could give them away, and then you wouldn't have any of these problems. So, you see what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to rationalize here why I haven't given away quilts. Now, giving away quilts. Well, we've already talked about quilt worthy, but what about donating? Where does one donate a quilt? So I looked up a site which actually talks about 6 Canadian charities that would love to find a home for your quilts. So they have one that's called Quilts for Survivors. This is a relatively new organization. Here in Canada, we are running into a whole lot of controversy and problems with our Indigenous people because of residential schools and, how there are survivors from residential schools, how the Catholic Church and the Canadian government and other organizations, basically ripped children from their parents, Native children, and put them in these schools and tried to strip them of their culture and their heritage and their language and basically make them into white people. And it's a big issue here in Canada right now. So there is this organization, Quilts for Survivors, where they donate quilts to survivors of this trauma, because although a lot of these things happened, several decades ago and beyond that, and before that, these people are still suffering from this. So again, quilts are therapy. So that's one place to donate them. Alzheimer's Society, especially they talk about making what they call fidget quilts or sensory quilts, which are quilts that have a lot of little embellishments added to them, like buttons and zippers and things that you can tie bows into and that kind of stuff. Because these people, it helps them with their therapy with Alzheimer's. It keeps their hands moving and their brains working as well. So, and some of these organizations have kits that you can buy to put these particular types of quilts together. They have a comfort quilt program, which is through the Ronald McDonald House. And of course, they have these in the States as well, which are these homes that have been built by McDonald's restaurant business for families who have children that are going through serious cancer treatments and things like that, to keep the family together, so they don't have to be in hotels, or so they can be close to their child as well. So again, that's another one that you can donate to. Now, this is the one I was talking about earlier, Project Linus. And what I like about Project Linus is not just the fact that they're giving quilts to kids, but they have specifications for size. So you see here, they're preemie and newborn, and they tell you the size, right up to teen. The teen is a larger quilt, 40 by 65 to 70 inches. And these are approximations. But again, it makes sense. They're bigger. They need a bigger quilt. So that's the ones that I want to focus my attention on, is either the tween and the teen with it, because I don't tend to make really small quilts. There's something called Victoria's Quilts Canada, and they give quilts to cancer patients. And I have heard from people I know that have gone through cancer treatments that they're sitting for a long time when they're getting all the chemo and stuff like that, and they are cold. They are cold.
Well, mind you, they have a requirement that you need a flannel.
Yeah, okay. I was going to say though that this one has a specific thing. You need a flannel backing for this as well, because the flannel backing is warmer than the cotton. And so that's another possibility. And then of course there's Quilts of Valor, and they have this organization in the States as well, where they basically honor retired military people by presenting them with a quilt. And from what I've heard, this has a tremendous effect on the well-being of these veterans as well. And they have little kits where they'll take not just quilts, they'll take blocks, and they have kits that you can purchase for like $5. It's a donation, and it has the fabric in for a block and the instructions for making the block. And you can either get a whole bunch of these and make a whole quilt from those blocks, or you can design your own Quilt of Valor. They usually have some specifications as to what they want. In the term, they say a Canadiana theme is a good choice, but it's not definite. It doesn't have to be. Quilts can be any color and pattern. The fabric choice is suitable for adults, and they have a minimum size requirement as well, because they're going to be for an adult. They want something a little bigger. Now I did hear that they wanted you to include a square of fabric that I think it was in a yellow or gold color, something like that, and that was supposed to represent sort of the heart of the quilt or something like that. But it doesn't say that here. But you can go to their actual website and you get all the details about that kind of thing. So there's plenty of organizations in Canada. There's even more in the States, and I found the American ones, and some of this is overlap, like Donate Quilts to Veterans, that's Quilts of Valor program there, and Quilts of Honor. They have two programs. They have different ones for kids, Project Linus, Quilts for Kids, Wrap Them in Love, Quilts Beyond Borders, Ronald McDonald House. They also have Victoria's Quilts, Hopes and Dreams Quilt for ALS, the Giving Quilt, from children to hospitals to neonatal, things like that as well. I'm sure you can probably also donate quilts to halfway houses, to women's shelters. I know one of my friends, online friends, that lives here in Canada, all he makes is charity quilts. He never keeps a quilt. He donates them to a woman's shelter all the time, making them. And there's also animal shelters as well, because they will use them as beds, but also they oftentimes have raffles for quilts, auctions and that kind of thing, for, that you can donate a quilt to, and they'll raffle off to make money for not-for-profit or charitable organizations, like animal shelters or things for people as well. The guild I used to belong to, they made charity quilts all the time for several local charities, and these charities were selling raffle tickets for them or auctioning them off. So there's all of that kind of thing there. So there's lots of opportunity. So why haven't I done it? Okay, because of all the reasons that we've already stated. And I have to get over that. It's a problem. I need to just do it. If I rip the Band-Aid off, I'm sure it won't be a problem. So I don't know. How do other people handle this? Are you a keeper or a giver? Do you keep all the quilts you make, or do you keep a few and give out the rest? How are you storing them? How do you display your quilts in your house? I've run out of walls to hang them on. And I'm working on a quilt right now, which I've shown you before, called the Color Splash, which has a lot of applique in it. That is a quilt I am never going to give away because of the amount of work that went into it, and I really like it. And I really want to find a spot in my house where it can be put on display. And I have some ideas. I just haven't bounced them off Walter yet, because it will involve him. But that's a topic for another day. The quilt's not finished yet. I still have 2 more months of instant, because it's a block of the month. So anyways, yeah. Next step for me is one day I'm pulling all the quilts out. One, they need to be refolded. They need to be aired and all that kind of stuff. And two, start sorting out. I have some people in mind that I want to give a quilt to, and I want to give to Project Linus as well. And maybe there's some other organizations or something. I have to see. So Walter's going to have to push me and say, give it up. Quit hoarding it. No room for it. We need a spot for more grow lights. Yeah, that might be it. Incentive. Well, if the quilts weren't there, we could have grow lights in that spot. Yeah. I think. Okay. So that's what we talked about today. You want to add anything to any of this? No, you just want to listen to me rattle on about your shirts that well, I'm very happy to receive the shirts. Don't have a problem with it whatsoever. I'll only point out the mistakes when he sews a sleeve to a collar. You know, it had to be said. It did. It only happened once.
I guess I'll never tell you again.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Lately, you haven't been as critical of my quilts.
Yeah.
You've been, well, I'm just that much better. You can't find the mistake now.
You hide them better.
That's right. Yep, I do. Okay, enough of that. All right, so thanks for joining us this week,
Yep.
and we'll see you next week. Don't know what the topic is next week,
Yep.
but we'll come up with something. Everybody have a great week. See you later. Bye-bye.
Yep. Bye-bye.